Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to today's convening of the Enterprise Committee. We have with us here Councilmember Lisa Goodman, Councilmember Alondra Cano, and Councilmember Fletcher. My name is Councilmember Lene Palmisano, and I chair this committee. Please let the record reflect that we have a quorum. And we've just been joined by Councilmember Reich. Today's posted agenda has a couple of changes to it. Council members, you have that here for you. I would like to move that we add to the consent agenda notice of a public hearing for our next scheduled enterprise meeting, which currently is scheduled for August 9th. It's setting a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 17 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances related to administration, Finance Department, clarifying internal auditor duties, and amending the Audit Committee referral process. I also would like to move that we subtract the monthly city coordinator's update. Our city coordinator had a family emergency and cannot be with us this week. So I'd like to make a motion for that then. If I could hear from my colleagues on making those two quick changes to today's agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. First for our consideration are these first three consent items. The first is an RFP for the IT department authorizing issuance of an RFP for a pool of suppliers for temporary IT-related needs. The second is privacy and security of data ordinance. Councilmember Fletcher might want to say a couple of things about that. And the third consent item is the notice of the public hearing for the audit ordinance. Does anyone have anything to share? Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I provided a little bit of a summary of what we're trying to accomplish with this ordinance change attached in LIM so that people can read about it. But I think this is kind of a big picture thinking process that I wanted to announce early so that we can invite people into it. We're not expecting to probably move on this until early next year, but I think it's one of the it's the kind of thing that we want to be getting ahead of because we're seeing so many new proposals for how to use technology that does gather data about our residents in all kinds of ways. And as we're thinking about new technology and wanting to access all the new exciting technology that's coming in all kinds of ways that I think can be very beneficial to our city, we want to make sure that we have a clear set of policies around how we're approaching the use of data. So I'm excited to work on that, and I want to invite people who have an interest in that, either as people who want to gather and harvest data in particular ways that they want to talk to me about, or who have concerns about their privacy that they want to talk to me about. I would encourage you to reach out in the next 6 months while we're developing this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I'm really appreciative that this initiative has a home and that the information governance piece is a way to move our city forward and evolve how we do business as a city has a place for this, and I appreciate your interest in having this conversation within that. This is the formal referral to staff is the motion in front of us today. Anything else that others would like to say? I'd like to mention that we've been joined by Councilmember Warsami. All those in favor of these three consent items, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. So our final item today is a discussion item, and it is something I've been briefing a lot of my colleagues about, but Mr. Micah Intermill, the budget director, is here, and he just wanted to give a quick budget update for some changes to the process that are taking place even this year. Mr.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, members, for the record, my name is Micah Intermill, the budget director here for the city. So, yep, just a few slides for you here to talk about where we've come this year with the budget process so far, what we're seeing in terms of the fiscal context, and then our calendar for our next steps throughout the next 5 months or so. So the first thing I'd like to highlight for you is some administrative changes we've made out of my office primarily. So this year, departments are providing more documentation information around the requests that they're putting forward for new funding. So they're including a 5-year financial horizon, excuse me, which is important so that we can see the long-term tails of any proposed new expenditures. They're including some background and rationale. So a few years from now, when we're saying, well, why was this added? We've got some context around that. A detailed description of the change, and then importantly, an equity impact statement and indication of how the investment will impact results so that you all know what you're getting for what you're buying. And then also of note, this year we ended the CARS process. So 2014, this began as a way to make investments in some smaller dollar capital items that there had been some deferred investment in. This year, rather than having a separate segregated process, that's all in one with the rest of the budget. So the next set of changes to highlight is from the mayor's process himself. I think from the get-go, the mayor has identified that he's seeking a much more collaborative process with departments and with council. And so he's invited council into the meeting requests with departments. He's shared all of those proposals with the full council. So hopefully all of you have all of those so far. And then the staff is really working iteratively, excuse me, with departments to see, if we can't fund a full item, does a partial solution work? So I think that's really where he's oriented. And then the council itself, under the direction of the budget chair and the Ways and Means chair, both of who sit in front of me right now, early on identified that there's a desire to end sort of the year-end crush that we see in our budget process. So rather than waiting until a few weeks at the end of November to really draw out some of the discussion around what changes council would like to make to the mayor's recommendation. So this year, the language we're using around it is an intent to amend process, which is a little bit wonky, but really council members, as the department proposals are being heard, will be asked to identify their intent. If they would like to increase an investment the mayor's put forward or reduce it, kind of signal that early so that they can work with other council members on how to effectuate that change in the context of the entire budget. And I think, I don't know if the chair wants to speak to it herself, but my understanding is that if a council member follows through this process, then that amendment could be included in a chair's amendment package.
Yes, that's right. One option we had, especially for new council members who haven't been through this process before, is a way to engage, to group together interested parties and to have deeper conversations with the department head, with our budget department in terms of how to perhaps fund something more or where to get money from for something new, how to remove something that might be appropriate, and to be able to just have a more thoughtful conversation around it. It does not prevent the ability for others to bring forward last minute kinds of initiatives, but this would be one way to get things done in a more collaborative manner.
Thank you. And then finally, and this was really a good suggestion from the city clerk. In prior years, department hearings had been scheduled on not necessarily a coordinated, cohesive basis. And so this year, there's really an intent to group department hearings in front of the council in a way that mirrors the committee structure, so that if a member of the public is interested in tuning in to see the public safety departments, then they don't have to hunt and peck, but one day we're trying to get all the public safety proposals done. So, it's a lot of change in a lot of different areas, but I think certainly the intent behind all of it is for a more collaborative budget process, more open and transparent process that yields a more widely accepted budget. So I couldn't join you without sharing some numbers. And so preliminarily, what we're seeing in finance and property services is that our starting point is the 5-year financial direction that was included in the 2018 budget. And that called for a 5.65% levy increase just to maintain our current service level in our departments and to fulfill some ongoing commitments, such as the Parks and Streets Ordinance, which laid out an increase in spending in those areas, our pension obligations, things like that. At the same time, as you've been seeing all of the proposals that come through from departments really do have a lot of needs. And I think it's a factor of a growing city. It's a factor of the shift of policy and engagement down to the municipal level. But at the end of the day, it's $62 million in requests just in the operating budget across all funds, and that's both one-time and ongoing. And of that 62, $18 million of it, or just about a third, is requested in ongoing general fund spending. So if we were to add all of the ongoing general fund spending that's been requested to that current service level increase, we would see a levy increase of about 12%, which I'm not proposing that. I'm not suggesting anybody is. But that's just to highlight the magnitude of the lift that faces the city. In addition, on the capital side of things, our Director of Capital Debt and Investments, Mike Ablin, has shared with all of you the 2019 through 2023 CLIC report. That body has put forth their recommendation. It's available online, and they, in their discussion with the mayor just a few days ago, highlighted that $1.125 billion of projects has been requested, and that's more this year than last year, and certainly continues the theme. So we talk a lot about property taxes when we talk about the budget, but I think it's important to note that only 23% of the total city budget comes from property tax, and about 40% of the general fund budget. So when we're just looking at increasing property taxes and not looking at increasing our other revenues, that's why we see a current service level of about 5.65%. And so absent any other change right now, we see about a 1% increase in revenues in the general fund. We've been talking with council, with departments about increasing some of our fees for business licensure and health inspections, rental licensure. These are areas where the fees are lagging. The revenues that we collect from the fees are lagging our expenditure in those areas. And so what that means is property tax is subsidizing that regulation from anywhere between 73 and 40%. So it's a lot is falling to the property taxpayer as opposed to the fee payer. And then the last point, in addition to the 5-year financial direction for property taxes in our budget, we also include a 5-year projection of utility rates. And this year that it calls for an increase of about 4.3% excuse me, for the average resident. So finally, just our calendar for the next few months. The mayor will give his budget address on August 15th. We've got 2 budget overviews scheduled where I will dig deeper into those numbers that I just briefly touched on here, as well as give a more detailed overview of the investments that the mayor has included in his recommended budget. September and October are set aside for the departmental budget hearings. Then we get into our public hearing phase, where at the end of November we have a truth and taxation hearing, where residents are invited to come and provide their input on the levy. November 30 will be the markup session, where we do formally amend the mayor's recommendation, and then December 5th, we're done. One final hearing and adoption. So any questions on any of that?
Mr. Intramural, I didn't hear in this, not in the calendar, but as part of this process, the short videos that you and Mr. Ruff did that will be available for public broadcast. Could you mention a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as part of the effort to make the budget process a little bit less intimidating, a little bit more transparent and engaging, my office, in coordination with the city's communications department, the city clerk's office, is working on putting together a few short videos that help the public understand both the size of our budget and what the fees that they pay, the property tax dollars that they pay fund, but also how they can get engaged along the way. Certainly, we have two public hearings at the end of the year as council is gearing up to adopt a budget, but really, I think the part of the message we're trying to convey is that residents should feel free to reach out throughout the year to the mayor, to council, to let their elected officials know what their priorities are. So those will be coming in August as well.
Super. Any other thoughts from committee? I have to say I really appreciate the conversations I've had with so many of my colleagues about the budget process and in ways that we could, it's an opportunity to improve it. And I really hope that we get to the point of being able to dig back into, instead of just dealing with change items, dealing with the meat, the existing pass-through every year. I know that's a conversation for another time, but I think this is a good start for ways we can keep on moving and improving ourselves. So thanks for the conversation. It's good to get this out in the public. Without any other thoughts, I'll appreciate your time, Mr. Intramural. And with that, I will move to receive and file this update. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. And our agenda is complete, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.